I'm 27 female with 8 kids. Some bio, some adopted, some soon-to-be stepkids. All long stories. I'm engaged to 28 male. My sister is 30, does not have kids, nor does she want them. Same for her husband. Due to the kids, my maternal grandparents left me their home when they passed, which has 6 bedrooms and some cash, while my sister just got cash. Paternal grandparents left me and my kids about 80% of their estate, while my sister, parents, and uncle split the remaining 20% between them. Our parents passed in 2018. Our relationship was bad enough that I didn't even know they passed until my uncle told me after. I knew things were strained, but I didn't know our relationship was that bad. This pushed me to reach out to my sister and ask if we could be friends again, which she agreed to, and we've been back in touch since 2018. I received about $2,000 from our parents, and my sister told me that our parents were in a lot of debt when they passed. So once that was paid off, me, her, and my uncle had gotten a third each of what was left. I was fine with that and didn't pry further as I didn't need the money and I believed my sister. As the house is 6 bedrooms and I have 8 kids, I've had to create more space, which I did by building an annex and a studio. The former is attached to the house and the latter is separate. The studio was completed 4 months ago. 3 months ago, my sister told me that she and her husband lost their jobs March last year, have been living off inheritance since, had nothing left, and were at risk of eviction. I said they could stay in the studio. I have problems with my sister's husband, so living in close quarters has not been easy. But I feel guilty about her potentially being homeless when I inherited a home. I refused to take any money off them because they had no money and told me they were job seeking. I talked to my uncle last week and I mentioned that my sister and brother-in-law were staying here until they got back on their feet. And my uncle was shocked, saying the last time they talked, my sister and brother-in-law were talking about buying a house and had never mentioned any issues with work. I interrogated him a little, and it turns out that I got just over $2,000 from my parents, as did my uncle. But my sister got well over $200,000, and there was no debt that took the rest out. I am not mad about the lying. I don't want any of the money. But I've let them live for free in my studio for a few months now, not charging them a penny, including them in our meals, sharing my home, putting up with their BS, and they had hundreds of thousands in the bank the entire time. What should I do now? How do I react to this without completely blowing up my relationship with my sister? I get not wanting to ruin your relationship. Being completely honest is best. I was talking to Uncle the other day, and he said that you inherited around $200,000 from Mom and Dad, and were planning on buying a house soon. That's so great. You didn't tell me you were looking. This is the best approach in my opinion. It implies I know you lied to me, and starting the conversation off positively like that will avoid a blow-up. Then you lead into why lie about something like that, and start talking to them about the move. See if you can help with the legwork for it to get them out of your home if that's something you're open to. This seems like it would be the best approach for what your end goals are. Hope it works out for you. Update. I spoke to my sister Saturday night. I asked her about her savings and she said it wasn't my business. I said that I've been paying for her and her husband for 3 months because she told me they were penniless, and she's had $200,000 tucked away this whole time. Then I would say I have a right to know. She admitted that she got over $200,000 from our parents, not $2,000, and she and her husband still have their jobs. And they worked out that if they can just collect their salaries and not spend for a year, they can buy a house outright. She said, as I got a house, me doing this would even things up. I said, my fiance and I have been scrambling to cover everything, and I couldn't believe she would be so selfish. But she maintained that this was the least I could do. She also said they already had $270,000, so it might not even be a year, and that as I start a new job in a couple months, I could afford it. I said from today, Monday, she was either paying rent or leaving. Shortly after that, brother-in-law started banging on my door, swearing, calling me names, demanding I come outside. Fiance went outside and brother-in-law punched him. Fiance hit back and we had to split them up. My sister and brother-in-law went to a hotel. I called to a solicitor on Sunday, confirmed they're excluded occupiers, meaning they only need a reasonable amount of notice. And brother-in-law punching my fiancé in front of our kids makes 24 hours reasonable. They're picking up their stuff today, and fiancé has already changed the lock. I'm assuming my relationship with my sister is going back to non-existent after this, and I don't really know how to feel about that. But it'll be a relief to not have to put up with, pay for them anymore. My parents met, got married, and had one biological child, me, 27 female. I had an adopted brother, Mark, who was 10 years older than me. He came to live with us when I was 2. He was 11 or 12. He is 37 male now. Growing up, there was obviously some tension between Mom and Dad about Mark. I always thought it had to do with how Mark behaved. He would always say something rude, or ditch classes, or get bad grades. When called out on it, he would throw a fit and sometimes break things. This was because his parents had abandoned him, and he was acting out. So when my dad took him in, there was a lot of work that had to be done. And my dad was great about it. Mom, less so, because she had me to work with and told my dad, "You can handle him. I have a baby." He went into therapy, and Mom and Dad went into marriage counseling. It was eventually decided that Mark would do best in a boarding school. He started attending when I was 6, and after that, we never lived in the same house. He came back into my life when I was 15 because he moved back. My mom said she would help pay for an apartment because she didn't want his girlfriend spending the night. She had turned his old bedroom into her office, and my dad agreed. They paid for his apartment for 2 years, and he got back on his feet. He would come over, but rarely did we get to hang out. My mom was always wanting to do something. I had a lot of clubs, and my dad seemed happy to have Mark to chat with. He spent a lot of time working on motorcycles with my dad. He took me to movies, introduced me to his future wife, and I thought it was okay. But it still felt more like an uncle than a brother. Dad had a heart attack when I was 23. Mark ended up having to quit his job and called every night to talk to me. We had a fight about how often he called because I was barely hanging on myself. Knowing that every night I would have to listen to someone else tell me how I should support them made me anxious. I told him we needed to limit the calls, and I didn't have the energy to grieve with anyone else. We still talked, but it was less and less, and then it became twice a month, which is how much we talk now. My mom passed away in August due to a stroke. There was no funeral, and Mark called to ask if I needed anything. I told him that we had her cremated, and if he wanted ashes, I would send him some. I told him I just needed to be alone for a while. My Aunt Harriet, Mom's sister, came down to stay with me for months. She was the one who informed me that everything, minus $4,000 for Mark, was left to me. I asked why, and she told me that Mark was never legally my mom's son. It came out that my dad was Mark's foster dad. He had guardianship, but never adopted him. They needed the money from the state to help pay for him, and my mom refused to legally adopt Mark, stating that she wanted everything to go to me. The reason my mom relented was my dad threatened to leave. They agreed that Mark would be a foster and would leave if it caused too much trouble, which is why they paid for Mark to attend boarding school, subsidized because Mark was a foster child. My dad intended for everything to be split between Mark and myself, but he passed first, and my mom kept her word, leaving everything to me. Since the house was in her name and inherited, my dad didn't have any claim to it anyways. So a few days ago, Mark called to talk about the estate. He said that his wife was wondering what the holdup was, because they had gotten a few thousand, and that was it. He asked if the only thing left was the house. He said he understood that in the pandemic, the house was not going to sell well, but he wanted to know if we were splitting the house or one of us would buy the other out. I told him, "Mark, the house. I'm not sure how to tell you this, but the house was left to me alone, along with everything else." I wasn't in my right mind for a while, and Aunt Harriet just told me a few weeks ago. I didn't know how to tell you, because it's a ducking weird situation. Aunt Harriet ended up speaking to him on Zoom, telling him it was probably best she told him, since she knew most of the situation better than I did. She was as nice as you could be, But she said because mom and dad never adopted him formally, due to needing the extra money due to health, having a baby, etc., and were technically his guardians. She then informed him that while I wasn't his sister, I was his biological cousin. Why no one told him, Harriet didn't know. I hadn't even known until Harriet told me. She said not to be too furious with me, but that I was the legal owner of the home, the cars, and what money they had left in the account. After the bills, it wasn't much, mostly enough to cover legal costs to change everything over. Mark called me this morning, still upset, and asked what I intended to do with the house. I said, live in it. He said that he was really upset I would not do the right thing and split the house down the middle. He said he felt like I was cheating him out of a family, even though he knows it was not my choice. He said that Dad would have wanted it split. I told him the truth. I am sorry we are not as close as I wish we were, but at this point, I am grieving my mom, and I am not going to get into a fight about my house. I am not selling it, and if you fight me on this, I am never speaking to you again. He told me he would need time to rethink his relationship with me, and I told him he should do that, and I am not sure if this is the last time we will speak. His wife sent me a long email asking me to do the right thing. They need money, and were counting on half the house to buy a place. Without that, they would be renting and in debt and unable to start a family for a few more years. I said I wished her the best, but the house was not for sale. I am not sure where to go from here. OP doesn't have to give Mark anything, but I do feel bad for him. His life with his birth parents is so bad he gets put into foster care. His foster mother clearly resents him, but was happy to take the foster money. Get put in boarding school at 14 because foster mom doesn't want him around. Foster mom pays for an apartment for him so she doesn't have to see him. When foster dad dies, who he thought was his adopted dad, he calls who he thought was his adoptive sister, and she tells him she can't support him emotionally. When foster mom dies, she leaves him only a small fraction of her estate, and he finds out his entire family for the past 25 years is fake. Maybe there's something else I'm not seeing, but poor guy, he's had a rough life. Here it goes. I decided that it would be best if I'd write down how I feel, because this is all way too confusing and too hard to process the normal way. On Sunday, while I was preparing dinner, I received a WhatsApp message from my mother stating, "You need to call me. It's important." Obviously, I completely freaked out and thought someone is sick or died or had an accident. For backstory, I live about 900 kilometers away from home, in a different country. So I called my mother with my heart already at 1,000 miles an hour, imagining the worst of the worst, because that is the kind of person I am. When she entered the phone, she said, more nonchalantly than you'd expected, "Have you heard already that I am a horrible mother?" Now, I don't want to go too much into detail about my life or my past, but this already sounds like a trick question. I declined, and then my sister, who was on the phone as well, they had me on speaker, proceeded to tell me that we have a 12-year-old brother, that my mother was pregnant in 2008. I was 18 then and still living at home. Hid it from everyone. Only told her husband once she was in labor. Went to the hospital, gave birth, told them she wanted to give the baby up for adoption, and then walked back home and proceeded with life as if nothing ever happened. The outrageous part of this is that she said this all completely nonchalantly, as if it wasn't a big deal. I was so shocked I couldn't even ask any questions really. She kept pitting herself and said that we are all, I have 5 siblings, well 6 now I guess, going to hate her now. In my first reaction I was so shocked that I didn't even have an opinion yet. I just told her she was all right because I felt sorry due to her pitying herself so much. They were telling us now because the woman who adopted our little brother contacted me and my siblings on Facebook. I just hadn't seen it yet. After we ended the phone call, I was a complete mess. I was so shocked I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had all the thoughts and questions, and I was trying so hard to remember 12 years ago and how I didn't notice at all. I had to talk to someone, so I called one of my brothers to realize they hadn't told him, and he hadn't seen the message from the mother either. So I basically told him, and he completely freaked out. He just had a baby, so he probably sees it from a parent's side. In hindsight, I think he was allowed to react however he wanted to. I think we all are. This is quite the shocking revelation. Anyways, I was so scared that he was going to yell at my mom, so I sent her a message telling her I told him by accident and that I was sorry. She just responded, "Okay." I apologized again and explained that I just needed to talk to someone. She ignored the message. Then I sent her a heartfelt voice message saying that I think she probably had a reason and for tonight she shouldn't beat herself up. No response. The next day, my mother didn't respond to me at all, which shocked me a bit. I felt so alone and sad all day. I could not think of anything else. Whenever I tried to focus on work, I kept wondering about my little brother. The following morning, my mother and my sister called me to ask me for help with a computer issue they had, without even mentioning anything about the adoption or even acknowledging that my mother completely ignored me. I was so upset that I couldn't even tell them on the phone how I felt. I just mechanically helped with their problem and hung up. Afterwards, my sister sent me a message asking what was my problem, and I said I can't believe my mom ignored my messages, didn't even ask how I was after that revelation, and then called me for help. My sister basically told me, "Oh yeah, she was busy." Really? Wow! Then my mother responded saying she was busy with other things. I told her that I felt alone and that I am so confused and feel like my life is a big fat lie. To which she responded with, "You lied to me before as well." So I basically have no right to be angry and question anything because I told white lies in the past. This was Monday, and now, since then, there has been silence apart from some pictures of her furniture in a group chat. Move to Friday, yesterday, evening, where one of my brothers calls me and one other brother to tell us that he has spoken to the adoptive mother, and that she told him there are 4 others that they gave up for adoption. At this point, I am completely broken. I feel so lost. I don't understand this. Why would you have so many children and give them up? We live in Europe. Birth control is widely available and not expensive. I really just can't function, and I don't know what to do or who to talk to, so I decided to talk to you guys. You are entitled to your feelings. This is your sibling, and there are potentially another 4 of them. Your mother is entitled to give her children up for adoption. However, her actions are incredibly selfish. As you said, birth control is readily available. I think you need to try to have an honest conversation with her and then decide for yourself if you want to find and have a relationship with these other siblings. As for your mother, you need to consider if you want to continue a relationship with her. She sounds quite toxic. She's selfish, manipulative, and irresponsible. What kind of person hides a pregnancy from their own partner? Be glad for the physical distance you have between you right now and take some time to process all the new information. Look after yourself.